And welcome to the Crossroads. I'm Martin Anthony, and tonight my guest is Cam Neufeld. And Cam, welcome to the Crossroads.
Great, thanks, Martin. Great to be here.
I'm very happy because you're Canadian and Western Canada. I'm from Western Canada
Yeah,
as
we
well.
actually know people in common.
Yeah, that was something I was really happy to hear about, that we have some mutual friends. We'll talk about that. And I see that you play the violin or fiddle. Is it?
Yeah, to me, they're the same instrument. Sometimes the setup's a little different for fiddle, steel strings as opposed to gut strings or soft synthetic strings. But really, it's stylistic difference. You know, the classical people tend to call it a violin. You know, blues and folk musicians call it a fiddle. So it's more stylistic than anything else.
So I hear that from talking with you before the program that you've done some traveling and you were in India apparently. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's, you know, the whole thing's been quite a remarkable trip so far, and my whole impulse to come here was my daughter was in India a year ago, and she brought back a Ravanhata, which is a one-string fiddle with 17 sympathetic strings, and it's played, has a little coconut shell, and it's played here, and it's just you play on the one string. The bow has bells on it, and so I was playing it at home, and in my mind I thought to myself, I should really go to India and study Ravanhata. And it's the gypsy caste musicians who play the bopa are the main players of the Ravanhata. And I thought, well, I should just continue my travels from India and sort of travel the gypsy trail all the way to Paris, where there's a gypsy jazz festival. The Django Fest is there at the end of June. And you know, I thought I would travel that whole route.
Wow.
So yeah, I was in India for 3 weeks. It was a pretty amazing time. Did you know, lots of sort of interesting things happened that I didn't really expect. You know, like they always do when you travel. I started out. I had been in contact with Johar Ali Khan, who is kind of a superstar of the Indian Hindustani classical music. He's a violin player. And so when I arrived, you know, we immediately went on this 18-hour train ride to Surat from Delhi, and we played 4 concerts, and I was studying music with him, and it was quite pretty amazing.
Yeah, wow, it sounds like, and now you found yourself at the Crossroads here in Istanbul, and let's move back a little bit to Canada and the music you're playing there. What's been your background of music, and what sort of, as they say, tickles your fancy the most?
Well, I was a guitar player originally, and I played guitar for probably 7 or 8 years, and then I began to play fiddle tunes on the guitar, flat picking melodies. And again, one day I thought to myself, I really should play these on the fiddle. And so I happened to, you know, a friend of mine had a fiddle, and you know, I impressed myself that I could actually make a sound on the fiddle, and you know, it's been downhill ever since. No, seriously, I fell in love with the sound of the fiddle, and it was something about the challenge of it that I really liked, because it was a very difficult instrument. Coming from a fretted instrument to non-fretted was a big challenge, and that's part of what was really the intriguing part of it to me and it felt more fluid, more like a voice too. So I played fiddle tunes, Appalachian fiddle tunes from the southern states, and bluegrass, and it sort of evolved into lots of other music that I had been playing on the guitar. I've been playing some jazz guitar and a lot of blues stuff, and you know, some metal stuff on the guitar. I was an electric guitar player. And you know, it's all those influences. They sort of blend together, and you know, so I played traditional music from Canada, a lot of the traditional fiddle music of Canada. I play a lot of hot club music, which is really the music of Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. So that's some of the, you know, I have a mishmash of influences really, and hopefully it comes together in some sort of coherent way. But you know, I think I'm not some people are specialists. You know, they find an area of, you know, music or whatever it is they focus in, and I really admire that, because it means you can really delve deeply into that. But you know, I'm a generalist, and so I take all these different influences and try to, you know, combine them together. And a lot of musicians are like that.
Yeah. You mentioned something about Canadian folk music. Now, we're quite a distance from Canada, and I don't get a lot of Canadian fiddle tunes. Would it be improper of me to ask if you could maybe play something,
Sure.
a little tune or something?
Sure. So something like this. So that gets played in dances. I've played that for hours and hours at you know, at country dances, and I spent about maybe 3 or 4 years playing country dances in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So I lived in Saskatchewan for a while. So the province kind of in the middle of the
it's
of the country.
one of my favorite provinces. Most underrated province in some ways.
I think so. You know, there's a lot of really great people there, and they had this country hall dance tradition that for a few years we played every weekend somewhere in the province, and they were real family events. Like everybody would come, grandparents and kids, and you know.
Well, Saskatchewan gets a bad rap because it's so flat, but you know, the people, you know, that big blue sky. It's just, I just love it there. It's that social aspect. How, you know, you just said that, you know, families, everyone gets together and they have these dances. Is this like in the major cities? Is it in the rural areas?
More in rural areas. And in fact, some of them would be completely, you know, in the country. There's no town. There's just a hall in the bush. You know, and a lot of these were northern Saskatchewan, which is all forest. You know, it's forest and lakes, and so there'd be this hall, and we'd show up, and people would come from, you know, probably a fair distance, and all the kids and grandparents, and we'd play all night, you know, till, you know, 5 or 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And there'd be sometimes a rotating audience, which is pretty interesting. You know, that, you know, usually at about 3 or 4 in the morning, all the local rowdies would come in. You know, the bars would be closed from whatever towns were in the area, and they'd all show up. And so all of a sudden there's this big influx, you know, at 3:30 in the morning of all the local rowdy guys. And then it got pretty entertaining. After that.
But they all know how to do a jig.
All the dances. You know, the waltzes and polkas and two-steps, all those dances. Sometimes if there was a caller, we'd do square dances.
Oh, wow.
We didn't always have a caller, but sometimes, you know, a good caller could really, you know, make things happen.
For those that don't know Canada who are watching the program, one thing is that, you know, for many years, Canada promoted, you know, mountains and lakes, and they never really promoted cities, and people thought, well, you know, a little nervous that there's absolutely nothing in Canada. You've lived in Edmonton, and you've traveled a lot across Canada with various with music and things like that, from these out in the middle of nowheres, as we'd say, the boonies, which you know, not everyone knows what that word means, but to large